the important thing is not about getting money or getting a fancy title or getting to a certain place in your career. It's about really getting in tune with that thing that God has put within you to develop and cultivate so that you can truly live a well-balanced and fulfilling life. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me here on Lily of the Field. My name is Caroline. So today is going to be kind of a different sort of style video. It's just going to be me talking from my personal experience about coming to the realization that I had bought into or bitten into a type of fruit that gave me a life I wasn't quite interested in living. Now, it's so funny to me when I think back at all of my academic career and I think about how I made that shift into the mindset that I needed to work so hard at school in order to get this good job that was so coveted amongst my peers and that was so kind of advertised by all the adults in my life. And so I worked really hard in school. I wasn't always a hard worker in school, but that's another story. But I worked really hard in school and I actually ended up getting out of college early, moving to my city that I'm in now, and immediately a month into living in the city, I was making 2.5 times my peers, working in a corporate environment, and I looked like a success. But what I discovered in the workplace was shocking. And it changed my view about what work should be, especially what work should be and what work is for a woman. You see, when I was working in the corporate world, I was working as a temp, which was really great for me because I hate monotony and same old, same old. I like for there to be new challenges. So I had a new job literally like every 3 months or so. I ended up working in about 11 different departments in this particular company. And as you can imagine, I ended up meeting a lot of older women who had gone the corporate route and did the corporate thing. And I would always find myself in a position where I could ask them their stories, or sometimes they would just tell me. And do you know what I discovered most of the time? The most difficult people to work with were women who were highly successful with no family. They were the least tolerant, they were the least patient, they were the most, you might say, neurotic. They would find fault with every little thing. They would fire you at the drop of a hat. Everybody was on eggshells, walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around. It was so confusing to me. I thought to myself, these are women who are successful. They drive the fancy car, they get the huge paycheck, they have the fancy corner office, they're the head of the department. Why are they so grumpy? Now, in contrast, the women who I loved working for the most were women who had established their family and were still super successful. Don't get me wrong. This is not a video about talking down about women pursuing good careers. But I realized that these women who had both families and career were so much more balanced in life, and they kept balance in their life. They worked on preserving their energy so that they could cater to both their family and their job. And this allowed them to just have more wonderful personalities. They were easier to work with. They were lovely to speak with. They were always willing to answer a question, to be understanding, and I loved working for these women. There was also a third category of women, and I found this woman to be particularly interesting because this was kind of the woman I was. And these were usually women who had aspirations that were outside of the corporate setting, but they decided to settle for a smaller position like an assistant or secretary. They did not have families. Now, it's not a problem if a woman doesn't have a family, but what I noticed about these particular women, and I'm talking about women in their 50s, 40s, 70s even, these particular women were women who had aspirations that were according to their skill set. They had a natural talent for writing or producing or directing or music, but they decided to settle for a corporate job, but not a high corporate job because they had no desire to climb the ladder. They settled for maybe assistant or secretary, and it really didn't give them any creative opportunity. It didn't challenge them in the ways they wanted to be challenged. I noticed that these women ended up being some type of hoarders, whether that be they hoarded actual things. And I know because I went to the apartment of one of these women to help her organize, only to realize that her house was chock full of things that she didn't use, she didn't have space for. I mean, it was in her living room, it was in her kitchen. She literally was hoarding things. But there was also non-physical hoarding. Hoarding of good times, when old times, the peak of what you thought you would be when you were younger, the one time you met that famous person, just hoarding every good experience in your life and never looking to create better experiences or to make progress or to live a life that was actually fulfilling. But the reason why these women impacted me so much was because I was that woman, but much younger. I was that woman before she became that woman. I was the creative who was thinking to myself, well, maybe I'll just, settle for a corporate job. It pays well. I don't really have any desire to be a CEO, but it pays well, and maybe I'll get to my creative career one day. But I'll tell you something, I really do believe that it was God who made sure to plug me into these positions so early on in my career. I think he was highlighting to me a major problem with a lot of women in the modern day. And it doesn't have to do with you being a family woman or you having any particular career. It really has to do with the way that we see our purpose and our work and the importance that it has on our mental health, on our emotional health, on our physical health, and the health of our relationships. The way that we relate with work actually completely changes the way that we relate with so many areas of our life. And it can affect the quality. When I saw this third category of women, I was terrified. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna end up like these women. But I knew that if I stayed in this state that I was, afraid to go after what I wanted, I was probably gonna end up like those women. Because you see, what happened with these women was that because they were not able to exercise their talents, their God-given gifts, but instead had given up those gifts in order to obtain this money that had promised to give them a good life, they actually ended up using that money to fill their lives with things they didn't need, things that actually left their life emptier and less fulfilling. And this is why I talked in my last video about Eve and where she went wrong and how Satan was able to trick her into giving up the wealth that she already had, the power that she already had, in order to obtain some elusive power that was going to be given to her through this fruit. And this is the warning that I want to share with you guys today. The important thing is not about getting money or getting a fancy title or getting to a certain place in your career. It's about really getting in tune with that thing that God has put within you to develop and cultivate so that you can truly live a well-balanced and fulfilling life. So much more fulfilling than climbing the ladder and making all this money and then crying in your office because you go home at night to nobody and you have no one to pass all this wealth of knowledge and income to. Don't think that I'm exaggerating. I have been the assistant outside of the office of executive women who cry in their offices and complain about how they don't go home to anyone and how embarrassed they are to have really nothing to show for that other than a fancy job title and a bunch of money. I'm not saying that there aren't women who would be completely happy with that life. I think that's wonderful if that's you. But what I realized at that young age was that I did not want to be the woman crying in her office with a bunch of money. And I also didn't want to be that low-level assistant who, because they're making all this money in lieu of pursuing their dreams, end up filling their life with things to compensate for those lost dreams. Now, you can take my experience with a grain of salt. I'm sure that you have experiences of your own. Please leave that down below in the comments. I took this experience as God showing me the fall before the fall. I feel like it was Him showing me that if you eat of this fruit, will you be able to handle the consequences that come along with it? Sure, you'll have money and you'll have security and you'll have a steady job and income, but are you ready to take on the emptiness that comes with doing work for a company who could let you go at any time? And are you willing to take on the emptiness that comes with losing your dreams and not pursuing the things that I've given you to accomplish in this life? So I felt like in this moment, I had a decision to make, just like Eve had a decision to make about whether to partake in this fruit, get this elusive knowledge that would supposedly make her like God, or whether to continue in the garden and discover what God had already given her. Now, I made the decision in that moment when I met all these different women that I wanted to stay in the garden. I wanted to discover what God had already put in me. I wanted to discover what God had already given me. I wanted to learn how to trust Him. I wanted to learn how to believe His word. I wanted to learn how to go forth in life, growing in wisdom by seeking Him out. What gifts have you given me? What things have you given me? What path would you like me to take? I know Satan's over here whispering about how much easier my life would be if I just took the corporate job and devoted myself to this company. I didn't want to eat that fruit. I would also recommend that you watch my video on the Proverbs 31 woman, because in one of those videos, I talk about how the Proverbs 31 woman cultivates the skills that God has given her. In fact, she delegates tasks that are not really in line with her natural skills so that she can focus on the things that God has actually given her to do. That shows you how seriously this woman took her work. But it wasn't the type of work that was about just getting as much money as possible or just making a name for herself or getting a fancy job title. Her work was about developing what God had given her. Her work was a form of worship. She made sure that she did not eat of a fruit that she could not handle the consequences of. It says that she considered a field before she bought it. That is the difference between an Eve and a Proverbs 31 woman. Eve was so enamored by the price point, right? The paycheck, security of knowing that she knew all good and evil, blessing and calamity. She'd be like God. She'd be so wise. She wanted that security at the expense of having a relationship with God. She wanted that security at the expense of getting to discover what God had already given her. She wanted that security from this tree, from this thing that God Himself made, rather than going straight to God herself and saying, God, how do you want to sustain me? How should I go about my life? I believe and I trust you that you will not steer me wrong. You will give me far above and beyond anything I can hope, think, or imagine. I trust, God, that I can have more with you than I can from some tree. But today, so many women, unfortunately, are still chasing trees in the form of green paper, or nowadays in the form of zeros in their bank account. They're still chasing the fruit of trees rather than chasing the one who made the tree, rather than chasing the God who owns all wealth. By the way, that is actually my middle name, Olulola. The long version is Oluwaloniola. That means God owns all wealth. And it's so true. Why am I out here trying to scrape up scraps of paper or get a fancy job title and a lot of accolades when I have God who owns all wealth, God who is the only acknowledgement that I need, who is right here with me, who wants a relationship with me, who does not want to see me struggle or perish. He does not want to see me begging for bread. He wants to take care of me. He has a plan for me. Why am I chasing his things when I could just go to him? It kind of reminds me even of the prodigal son and how he was chasing his father's things, but what he really needed at the end of the day was his father. And that's what I want to leave you with today, is this question: am I chasing a tree that I was not asked to go and eat from? Or am I seeking God for my sustenance, for my wisdom, for my direction, for my security? I hope to always make the decision to stay in the garden. I hope to always make the decision to walk with God. I hope to always make the decision to run to him to get my wisdom, to get my success and my prosperity. People hate prosperity gospel, but if you're going to seek prosperity from anywhere, seek it from God. Ask him, where is my wealth? God, where have you put it for me? What do I have to develop? What gifts and talents have you given me to develop? And then go ahead and get to work like the Proverbs 31 woman, developing and cultivating those God-given skills. You discovered what God already gave you. You discovered the wealth that he already gave you. You discovered the power that he already gave you. Well, I just wanted to leave you with this thought. And if anything I said in this video touched you, blessed you, please give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below if you have any kind of insight or experiences that you've had with your work, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for all of you who have subscribed. I'm so grateful to have actually hit 200 subscribers. That was just so amazing. I just want to thank you so much. And please share this video with whoever you think it might help or inspire. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel, Lily of the Field. And until next time, have a blessed day. Bye.